Popsicles, sprinklers, a cool breeze. Talk about refreshing. You know what else is refreshing this summer? A brand new phone with Verizon. Yep, get a new phone on any plan with Select Phone Trade-in and My Plan. And lock down a low price for 3 years on any plan with My Plan. This is a deal for everyone, whether you're a new or existing customer. Swing by Verizon today for our best phone deals. 3-year price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate only. Additional terms and conditions apply for all offers.
I like things my way. My coffee, my schedule, and my treatment. So I talked to my doctor about self-injecting with the new Vyvgart Hytrulo prefilled syringe, which contains Efgartigimod alpha and hyaluronidase QVFC. It's injected under your skin, subcutaneously. Now I can inject in my space on my time. It's my treatment, my way. Visit VyvgartMyWay.com. That's VYVGART MyWay.com. And talk to your doctor about Vyvgart Hytrulo. Brought to you by Argenix.
You know who's surprisingly good with money? Greenlight Kids. The other day, mine stopped to think about the ROI on a bag of chips. Seriously. From getting paid for doing chores around the house to saving up for concerts, Greenlight's teaching my kids how to handle their money.
Greenlight your kids' financial future with the #1 family finance and safety app. Try Greenlight risk-free at greenlight.com/podcast.
Popsicles, sprinklers, a cool breeze. Talk about refreshing. You know what else is refreshing this summer? A brand new phone with Verizon. Yep, get a new phone on any plan with Select Phone Trade-in and My Plan. And lock down a low price for 3 years on any plan with My Plan. This is a deal for everyone, whether you're a new or existing customer. Swing by Verizon today for our best phone deals. 3-year price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate only. Additional terms and conditions apply for all offers.
For 25 years, Brightview Senior Living Associates have been committed to creating a vibrant culture and delivering exceptional services, making Brightview a great place to work and live. If you're looking for a rewarding opportunity to serve your local community and grow, we want you to join our team. Brightview Senior Living is growing and actively seeking vibrant associates to join our community teams, including directors, healthcare, activities, hospitality, and dining. Apply today at careers.brightviewseniorliving.com. Equal employment opportunities. Text BV Jobs to 97211 to apply.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods Extra as part of Season of the Witch. This episode is all about
Harvest rituals.
Yeah, I've got some harvest rituals. Some of them in this episode because it's basically something I'm really interested in. You guys are never going to look at a cornfield or a wheat field the same way ever again after I finish this week. We'll get straight into it. Are you ready for the story?
Yes, I am.
Harvest time in old Europe was more than a season of toil. It was a threshold between the worldly and the supernatural. Across the continent, farmers believed that something alive lurked in the grain, a spirit that grew with the crops and retreated ever inward as the cutting progressed. Many traditions focused on the moment of the last sheaf, the final bundle of stalks left standing, because that was where the corn spirit made its last stand. In folklore from Britain to Scandinavia, the last sheaf was widely considered to be the home of a field spirit that had to be driven out or captured when the harvest ended. Through 3 interwoven customs, the ritual of the last sheaf and corn spirit, the harvest cry known as the neck, and the dark whispers of harvest sacrifice, our ancestors sought to honour, contain, or even appease that mysterious presence. Each custom reflects the recurring idea that harvest was a spiritually perilous time when the earth demanded a gift in return for its bounty. Picture a hush falling over a golden field at dusk. All the grain has been cut and gathered, except for a small last sheaf left standing amid the stubble. In many rural traditions, no one rushed to reap that final clump of wheat or oats. There was a palpable awe around it. Folklore said the spirit of the corn, the life force of the crop, retreated into the very last sheaf as the harvest went on. To cut down the last refuge was to make the corn spirit homeless, an act that could anger the spirit if not handled properly. For this reason, the final sheaf was often treated with great ceremony rather than chopped up carelessly. One common custom was to spare the last sheaf from immediate threshing and instead fashion it into a figure, giving the hidden spirit a new home for the winter. Farmers in many parts of Europe wove or plaited the last stalks into decorative shapes known as corn dollies. These woven straw figures, sometimes human-like, sometimes abstract, were hung in cottages or barns until the next spring, when they would be ploughed into the first furrow or otherwise returned to the earth, thus releasing the spirit back to the soil for next year's planting. In many regions, the corn dolly took on the identity of an old woman or mother figure. Ethnographers of the 19th century noted that in the Danzig area, today Dansk, Poland, the person who cut the last ears of corn would tie them into a doll called the Corn Mother, or Old Woman, which was carried home on the last wagon. In parts of Germany, like Holstein, the final sheaf was even dressed in women's clothes and honoured as the Corn Mother, then soaked with water, a ritual drenching thought to encourage needed rain. In Styria, Austria, the last sheaf was shaped into a woman by the oldest lady of the village and crowned with a wreath of the finest ears. The effigy was paraded with celebration and then laid in the barn to keep off the mice. The idea that the spirit in the grain could take on a grandmotherly form dates back at least to early medieval times. A 7th century saint's sermon in Flanders scolded villagers, "Do not make little figures of the old woman out of the last sheaf." Even in 20th century Scotland, farmers remembered that after the last corn was cut at Hallowmas, they would fashion a female figure from it called the Carlin, meaning old woman in Scots. Yet the corn spirit was not always kindly imagined as a grandmother. In many places, it was seen as something wild that dwelt in the crops, and when cornered in the last sheaf, it could be dangerous. Across Germany and Slavic Europe, peasants warned that the wolf sits in the last sheaf. No one wanted to be the one to cut that final patch of grain for fear of releasing the corn wolf and drawing its wrath. Reapers would even compete to avoid being the last cutter or binder. In Mecklenburg, every harvester strove not to be left with the last bundle, since the wolf is in it. Similar sayings spoke of a dog lurking in the grain in France. The slower harvester who fell behind was said to have the white bitch after him, and finishing the reaping was called killing the dog of the harvest. Other times the fleeing corn spirit was envisioned as a hare or fox hiding in the last uncut rows. In some regions, a live hare found in the final sheaf was caught and killed, an animal stand-in for the spirit of the field. All these legends share the notion that something alive, whether grand maternal or bestial, had taken refuge in the last sheaf, and that cutting it was an act of pursuit and capture. I haven't. The shout rings out across a Cornish field, startling birds from the hedgerows. What have ye, comes the chorus in reply. A neck. The gatherers roar back in unison. This dramatic call and response marked the end of the harvest in parts of the British Isles, especially Cornwall and Devon. It was known as crying the neck. To an outsider, the scene must have been bewildering and a little eerie. The entire harvesting team gathered in a circle at dusk around the last stalks of corn. The master of ceremonies, often an older farmhand, knowledgeable in the old ways, would stoop and cut the very last patch of grain with a sweep of his scythe. Raising that final sheaf high above his head, he would cry out the ancient words of triumph. I have one, in the broad local dialect. The other harvesters, standing bareheaded, would respond in a ritual fashion. What have you? The reply came loud and proud. A neck, meaning the last sheaf, now personified as the neck. Cheers erupted. Hurrah, hurrah for the neck. Hurrah. In that moment, the tension of the long harvest broke in a wave of celebration. The spirit of the field had been secured, and all could rejoice without fear. The origins of the term neck in this context are debated. Some say it comes from the Old Norse word knopp, meaning a bundle or sheaf of corn. Others simply note that the neck in the local dialect refers to the twist of straw itself. Yet the word carries a visceral echo of something living. A neck to be grasped or even wrung. In the ritual, the last sheaf was indeed treated as a captured creature. One 19th century account from Devon describes how the harvested neck was carefully plaited and tied into a decorative shape by the reapers. This corn doll was often made to resemble a female figure, with a slender waist of bound straw and a skirt fanning out below. The figure would sometimes be adorned with ribbons or flowers, a token of respect to the spirit now in human-like form. Everyone knew they were handling the powerful essence of the harvest, now concentrated in a few stalks of wheat. After the shouting ritual, the ceremony wasn't over. It simply moved from the field to the farmhouse. The proud reaper who held the neck would carry it back in a sort of triumphal procession. At the farmhouse door, however, a final challenge awaited. Traditionally, a young dairymaid stood guard at the entrance with a pail full of water. As the man with the neck approached, she would attempt to douse him and the precious sheaf. If he was caught and splashed, amid much laughter, it was said to be good luck, a sprinkling of life-giving water to please the spirit, and probably a reminiscence of pagan rain rituals. But if the carrier was clever and managed to slip inside dry, he earned the right to claim a kiss from the soggy guardian as his prize. In either case, the neck itself was brought into the house with great fanfare. It would be set in a place of honour at the harvest feast, often hung up high or placed at the head of the table overlooking the merrymakers. There it presided like an unseen guest, the spirit of the harvest, invited to join in the village's gratitude. The celebration that followed, known as the harvest home or Mel supper, Kim supper, etc., in different regions, was hearty and joyous. Food and ale were plentiful, and for that night the reapers and the farmer ate side by side as equals, bound by the shared relief of the successful harvest. Often the plaited neck or corn dolly from the last sheaf would remain on display all through autumn and winter. Farmers might hang it from a kitchen rafter or in the barn. Come spring, there were various ways to return its spirit to the earth. In some places, the old neck was burnt on the plough's first fire. In others, it was buried or ploughed under in the first furrow of the new planting. The following year, a new one would be made. The cycle continued. Not every region called their last sheaf a neck, but similar rituals sprang up throughout the British Isles. In Wales, the last sheaf was known as the harvest mare, or sometimes the hag, and reapers took turns throwing their sickles from a distance to cut it down, so that no single person bore the onus of taking it. Once it fell, it might be fastened to a pole or crafted into a crude figure, and then stealthily hurled into a neighbour's field as a prank. The rival farm would respond in kind, each attempting to pass on the mare, until some unlucky farmer found himself with no one else to foist it upon. In parts of Ireland and Scotland too, the last sheaf could be called the Cailleach hag, or harvest maiden, and traditions of chasing, hiding or drenching it echoed those in England and Wales. All carried the same undertone, a sense of competition. Nobody wanted to be last, mixed with ritual relief at harvest completion, and a dash of paranormal dread turned into communal fun. By reviving the crying of the neck each year, a practice that nearly died out but has been revived by folklore societies in Cornwall since the 20th century, communities keep alive the memory of a time when reaping the last sheaf truly felt like confronting a spirit. The loud exultation of hurrah for the neck was both a celebration and an exorcism, a way to collectively acknowledge the spirit of the harvest, announce that it had been caught, and hopefully placate it through respect and hospitality. But underlying this jubilation is an older, more sombre question. What did our ancestors do before these rituals became just cries and dolls' games? Folklore's hint that in harsher ages, the harvest spirit's price was not paid in songs or ale alone, but in blood. As the last echoes of the next cry faded, an eerie thought might occur. Perhaps once, long ago, simply capturing the spirit was not enough. Perhaps the land demanded a sacrifice. Beneath the cheerful veneer of harvest home lies a darker stratum of legend, one that speaks of sacrifice. In half-remembered superstitions, people across Europe hinted that in ancient times, the culmination of the harvest required a life to be given for the life that was taken from the fields. After the last sheaf was cut and the feasting done, something or someone might have had to bleed into the earth to repay the grain. Older generations sometimes voiced a grim warning. Whoever cuts the last corn will soon die. This was a common saying in parts of Europe, a superstition that the reaper who finished the harvest had effectively taken on the role of the corn spirit and thus was marked for death. In some communities, it was the person who bound the last sheaf who was fated to die within the year. Such beliefs are obviously not literal truths, yet their persistence hints at collective memories of sacrificial rites. Folklorists like Sir James Fraser argued that these superstitions were faint reflections of a time when the corn spirit was not just symbolically slain, but truly offered up, perhaps in the form of a human proxy who was killed to secure the next year's fertility. While direct evidence of human sacrifice at harvest in Europe is scarce and much debated, the figure of the Corn King, a young man chosen to represent the spirit of grain, and sacrificed in some pagan rite, became a trope in folklore studies, though it often rests more on conjecture and metaphor, such as the English folk ballad John Barleycorn, in which the grain spirit undergoes a mock execution, than on documented ritual. Still, the unease about being the last harvester speaks to this fearful possibility that once upon a time the last sheaf cut meant a death to come. More concretely attested are cases of animal sacrifice linked to the end of the harvest. All across Europe, there are hints that when the fields had given their all, farmers offered a token of life back to the earth. One vivid example comes from the Sorbs, Wends of eastern Germany. Well into the 19th century, Sorbian harvesters practiced a ritual known as cock bashing on the final day of reaping. As the last sheaf stood decorated with colourful ribbons to mark the end of the work, a live rooster, symbolically connected to the harvest god of old Slavic religion, was brought to the field. The harvesters would dig a small pit and bury the rooster in it up to its neck, then take turns, blindfolded, for an extra challenge, trying to kill the rooster with a flail. Amid laughter and ritualistic seriousness combined, the rooster was eventually struck and killed. The youth who dealt the death blow was hailed as the Harvest King and given a wreath of oak leaves. A girl was chosen as his queen. The rooster, a sacrificial cock, was then ceremonially cooked and eaten by the harvesters that evening as part of the end of harvest feast. In earlier times, the blood of the bird would have spilled directly onto the field. Sorbian folklore held that the rooster's life force and fertility were thus returned to the soil, an offering to the deity. In Slavic tradition, the thunder god Perun, to whom cockerels were sacred, in thanks for the harvest and as a plea for the land's renewal. Over the years, the practice was tamed. Later versions used a pottery jar symbolically in place of the live bird, or killed the cock more humanely before the playing game, but the core idea remained: blood for the fields. The Sorbian cock sacrifice is dramatic, but not unique. In some parts of Europe, if a wild hare was flushed from the last standing grain, it might be caught and slain as a natural surrogate for the corn spirit. In other areas, harvest folklore recalls the killing of a goat or an ox at harvest end, perhaps an echo of communal feasting on a sacrificed animal. Many of these could simply be practical celebrations, killing a fattened animal to feed the workers at harvest home, later given spiritual interpretation. Yet the recurrence of sacrificial symbols in harvest customs is striking. Even the harmless corn dollies and games often carry a sinister shadow. Recall how the neck and other effigies are sometimes burnt, drowned, or ripped apart after harvest. In parts of Germany, the last sheaf was not kept kindly at all, but was threshed with extra zeal. Farmers would beat it to pieces on the floor, declaring they were killing the corn wolf that lurked inside. In one recorded custom near Magdeburg, after threshing, peasants led a man covered in straw, personifying the corn wolf, in chains around the farmyard, as if capturing and executing the malignant spirit that had now been driven out of the grain. These violent symbolic acts suggest that the old spirit of the fields had to be decisively vanquished at harvest end, not merely invited to the feast. Through legend and rite, you can sense the ancient bargain being enacted. The land gives life, and life must be returned to the land. Harvest time was joyous, yes, but also edged with the knowledge that an era of death was beginning. The crops were dead on the stalk, winter was coming, and the continuity of life now depended on unseen forces of sun, soil and sky. So our ancestors answered this uncertainty with ritual drama. They cast themselves in roles: reaper and corn spirit, queen of the harvest and harvest hag, wolf and hare, sacrifice and celebrant, to give form to the mysteries of nature. In doing so, they ensured that something was given back. If not a living being, then an effigy, a cry, a libation of ale, a sprinkling of water, a token of respect or gratitude. The recurring theme in all these harvest traditions is appeasement and continuity. The fields that fed the village were not inanimate. They were thought to be ensouled by a presence that could bless or curse. And when the last sheaf fell, that presence had to be handled with care. Honoured, populated, propitiated, sometimes feared, and perhaps once placated by the ultimate sacrifice.
Popsicles, sprinklers, a cool breeze. Talk about refreshing. You know what else is refreshing this summer? A brand new phone with Verizon. Yep, get a new phone on any plan with Select Phone Trade-in and My Plan. And lock down a low price for 3 years on any plan with My Plan. This is a deal for everyone, whether you're a new or existing customer. Swing by Verizon today for our best phone deals. 3-year price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate only. Additional terms and conditions apply for all offers.
Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
I loved this episode. I love all those corn dolly type rituals, and can you remember making corn dollies?
No.
We went down the woods once. It was on autumn equinox.
They're probably haunted now.
No, I hung them on the trees outside, and then after probably scaring all the post people as they were coming in. It was like a bit Blair Witch in the garden. But yeah, I just left them there, and then eventually it just melted away. But that was good. We went down to the woods. We had a fire. It was when you were quite little, though. And we made corn dollies. And then it rained and we came home.
Yeah. Well, that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. We'll catch you again on Sunday. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
Popsicles, sprinklers, a cool breeze. Talk about refreshing. You know what else is refreshing this summer? A brand new phone with Verizon. Yep, get a new phone on any plan with Select Phone Trade-in and My Plan. And lock down a low price for 3 years on any plan with My Plan. This is a deal for everyone, whether you're a new or existing customer. Swing by Verizon today for our best phone deals. 3-year price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate only. Additional terms and conditions apply for all offers.
Only Boost Mobile.
Boost Mobile
We'll give you a free year of service.
Free year?
When you buy a new 5G phone.
New 5G phone?
Enough.
But I'm your hype man. When you purchase an eligible device, you get $25 off every month for 12 months with credits totaling 1 year of free service. Taxes extra for the device and service plan. Online only.
Did you know Tide has been upgraded to provide an even better clean in cold water? Tide is specifically designed to fight any stain you throw at it, even in cold. Butter? Yep. Chocolate ice cream? Sure thing. Barbecue sauce? Tide's got you covered. You don't need to use warm water. Additionally, Tide Pods let you confidently fight tough stains with new Cold Zyme technology. Just remember, if it's gotta be clean, it's gotta be Tide.